Dead America. Tales from the Outer Banks. The Rescue, Part 1, by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. Day 0 plus 4. Officer Bowman crept along slowly on the highway, heading north towards the bridge that connected Hatteras and Bodie Island. His patrol car rolled steadily over the asphalt, the engine's gentle purr mingling with the bumps in the road. The sun was barely above the horizon, creating warm red and orange hues in the sky. Streaks of gold stretched across the ocean to the east, painting the water's surface with shifting light. Bowman pulled off to the side of the road at a beach access spot, cutting the patrol car off. The sudden silence was almost jarring. Bowman grabbed his large cup of coffee, getting out and walking up to the top of the walkway, giving him a view of the beach. The wooden planks creaked beneath his boots as he made his way up, the salt-laden breeze tousling his hair. He stood there for several minutes, enjoying the cool morning breeze, taking in the sights and savoring every drop of his coffee. The warm liquid provided a comforting familiarity in a world that had changed so drastically. The beach below stretched empty in both directions, the pristine sand unmarred by footprints. No early morning joggers, no tourists setting up for a day of tanning, just nature reclaiming its domain. The last few days had been nightmarish, dealing with the undead and securing the island. Much to his surprise, they hadn't lost a single soul clearing the island, at least once they had the bridge blocked off. Before that had been another story entirely, one he preferred not to dwell on during this rare moment of peace. Bowman took another long sip of his coffee, letting the caffeine work its way through his tired body. 3 days without proper sleep had taken its toll, leaving his eyes bloodshot and his movement sluggish. But there was work to be done, and as one of the few remaining authority figures on the island, much of it fell to him. As he stood and drank his coffee, watching the sunrise, his radio kicked on. Henry's voice came through, crackling slightly with static. "Hey Bowman, are you up?" Henry asked. Bowman brought the radio to his mouth, pressing the button with his thumb. "Yeah, Henry, I'm up. What do you got for me?" "How soon can you get down to the lighthouse? There's something you need to see." Bowman let out a long sigh, taking a sip of his coffee before responding. Whatever moment of peace he had hoped to enjoy was clearly over before it had properly begun. "I'm heading up to the blockade to get the morning report, so give me 45 minutes or so. Does that work?" He kept his eyes on the horizon as he spoke, trying to commit the view to memory. "Let's make it an hour. It'll give me and Linda a chance to run and grab some breakfast." "Sounds good to me. I'll see you then." Bowman put the radio back on his hip, taking one long sip from his coffee, giving the sunrise one more look. The golden disk had fully emerged now, casting long shadows across the beach. If he didn't know better, he might have convinced himself it was just another beautiful morning on the Outer Banks. "Whole world is falling apart, but damned if that view never disappoints," he muttered to himself, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Bowman walked back to his car, jumping in and peeling out. The tires kicked up gravel as he pulled back onto the highway. He picked up the pace up the highway, getting to the bridge in a matter of minutes. His foot pressed harder on the accelerator, the car responding with a surge of power. He sped along, stealing a glance at the ocean on his right as he approached the barricade at the north end. In the distance, he could see the makeshift blockade that separated Hatteras Island from Bodie Island. It had been a rushed job at first, but with each passing day, they had reinforced it, transformed it from a hasty barrier into a proper defense. He slowed down as he got close, parking a few yards from the edge. The initial fencing had been reinforced several times over with parked cars. Half a dozen men stood guard, rifles slung over their shoulders. They looked tired but alert, eyes scanning the highway beyond the barrier for any sign of movement. The leader of the group, Jackson, motioned for Bowman to join him on top of a pickup truck positioned in the middle of the blockade. Bowman got out, walking over and climbing up, helped by Jackson. The man was in his late 20s, physically fit and capable. "You're up early? Did you get any sleep last night?" Jackson asked, concern evident in his voice as he helped pull Bowman onto the truck's roof. "I grabbed a few hours." Bowman settled himself on the truck, his boots resting against the warm metal of the roof. The elevated position gave him a clear view of the highway beyond their barricade, stretching north towards Bodie. "Hey, that's better than the last couple of nights." "Tell me about it. So what's the situation out here?" "All quiet on the northern front. Haven't seen a car in 12 hours at least." Jackson gestured towards the road ahead of them. Bowman looked out at the highway, which was littered with a few dozen abandoned cars. Most had been parked on the side of the road, while others were stretched across the asphalt, acting as a barrier to the undead. Some vehicles showed signs of hasty departure, doors left open, personal belongings scattered around. Others bore more ominous marks, blood-stained windows and dented hoods. 30 to 40 corpses rotted on the pavement, all of them missing a significant portion of their head. Most of the men on the barricade weren't physical specimens, but they could shoot. What about visitors? Had many of them? Bowman pulled a pair of binoculars from his belt, scanning the horizon more carefully. Half dozen or so during the night. Jackson readjusted his rifle, the weapon resting comfortably against his shoulder. "That's not too bad," Bowman replied, lowering the binoculars. "It gets better, though." Jackson had a hint of excitement in his voice, something Bowman hadn't heard in days. "How so?" "I think they're slowing down. At least some of them are." Jackson pointed toward a distant figure near one of the abandoned cars, moving with a distinctly sluggish gait. "Slowing down? Are you sure?" Bowman asked. "Very sure. Ever since we set this thing up, as soon as they spotted us, they ran right for us. Last night, though, all a couple of them could do was shamble." Jackson made a shuffling motion with his hands, mimicking the awkward movement. "Were they injured? Got hit by a car, maybe?" Bowman asked. "Maybe, maybe not. I don't know what to make of it, but I think we should definitely keep an eye on it," Jackson replied. "Most definitely. Are you guys good up here for a while?" Bowman lowered the binoculars, turning his attention back to Jackson. "Why? Do you got someplace to be?" Jackson said, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, Henry called me up, said there's something I need to see." "Go do what you gotta do. We'll hold down the fort until the morning crew comes in." Jackson extended his fist. Bowman and Jackson exchanged a fist bump as the officer jumped down and retreated to his car. He got back in his patrol car, the engine rumbling to life as he turned the key. He spent the next half hour driving south through Avon towards the lighthouse. The coastal town was eerily quiet, storefronts shuttered and streets empty. Occasional signs of struggle marred the peaceful facade. Broken windows, abandoned luggage, dark stains on the pavement that Bowman tried not to look at too closely. It was a pleasant drive, pretty much just him on the road, the only car passing him being the morning bridge crew on their way to relieve Jackson and the others. They waved as they passed, recognizing the officer that had brought them all together. After a while, Bowman pulled into the parking lot of the lighthouse. A handful of cars remained in the lot, the officer not knowing if the owners were alive or dead. The tall, striped structure of the Hatteras Lighthouse stood proudly against the blue sky, seemingly untouched by the horror that had swept through the islands. Before he could get out of his car, Bowman looked up and spotted Linda walking towards him carrying 2 cups of coffee, her shoulder-length blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, playing nicely with her athletic frame. She moved with purpose, her steps confident on the gravel lot. Bowman stepped out, accepting the cup graciously. The warmth seeping through the paper cup into his hands was welcome, as was the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. "Good morning, Bowman. Thought you might like a little pick-me-up." Linda smiled, the expression brightening her tired face. "I'll never turn down a cup of liquid gold, especially since we're going to be out before too long." Bowman took a grateful sip, savoring the flavor. It was better than the coffee he'd made for himself that morning, which wasn't surprising given he was staying in a cheap hotel. Maybe not. There was a hint of mystery in her voice. Bowman gave Linda a curious look. The blonde shot him a smile before motioning for him to follow. Rather than ask questions, he drank his coffee, the two of them walking to the lighthouse entrance, which was propped open. "Henry's waiting for you at the top." Linda gestured toward the entrance. "You're not coming?" Bowman asked. "I'm putting together a presentation in the gift shop. Once y'all are done up there, I got more for you. And if you don't mind, I took the liberty of calling in a few others too, Linda said. I trust you, Linda. We'll be down soon, Bowman replied. Linda smiled and nodded, heading back to the gift shop. Bowman stepped into the lighthouse, looking straight up at the seemingly never-ending spiral staircase. With a sigh, he began walking. The climb was arduous, each step bringing a protest from his tired legs. By halfway up, his breathing was labored, his body protesting after the abuse it had taken over the last few days. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the top, spotting Henry at the ocean side, fiddling around with the telescope. That was a hell of a lot of cardio for this early in the morning, so I hope this is good, Bowman said, with a hint of forced humor in his voice. Morning, Bowman, I think is definitely good. Come here and take a look. Henry stepped back from the telescope, gesturing for Bowman to approach. Bowman walked over to the telescope, looking through it. It took a moment for him to get the proper angle, letting out a gasp as the image came through clearly. Through the lens, he could see a massive cargo ship, its hull run aground on the sandbar several miles offshore. Is that what I think it is? He adjusted the focus, trying to make out more details. Yup, I think it is. Henry stood beside him, arms crossed over his chest, a hint of excitement in his voice. Bowman continued staring through the viewfinder, a giant cargo ship caught on the seabeds, not moving. Its massive hull dwarfed the fishing boats that typically plied these waters, a behemoth of steel stranded in the shallow waters. That's a big boy right there, Bowman whistled, impressed by the sheer size of the vessel. And unless I'm mistaken, it's filled with cargo, Henry said. How do you know that? Bowman straightened up, looking at Henry with raised eyebrows. Because I looked up the ship ID and it came back as cargo out of Norfolk. Henry pulled a small notebook from his pocket, flipping to a page where he'd written down details. The question is, what is it doing here? Bowman turned back to the telescope, studying the ship more carefully. I talked to a few fishermen on the radio, and apparently there was an emptying of the port the night all this started, Henry replied. If somebody knew this was coming, loading up goods and hitting the high seas wouldn't be the worst idea, Bowman said as he continued staring through the telescope. There's a slight problem though. Check out the right side of the deck, Henry said. Bowman adjusted his view again, spotting a handful of zombies wandering about on the top. Their movements were jerky and uncoordinated as they shambled across the metal deck. Even at this distance, there was no mistaking what they were. They won't be any problem, Bowman said with confidence. What about below deck? Henry asked. Those ships aren't exactly made for large crews, so with any luck, there won't be too many of those people on board, Bowman said confidently. So, should we get some people together to check it out? Henry inquired. It's not going anywhere, and there's something we need to do before we get to that. Bowman stepped back from the telescope, turning to face Henry fully. Yep, that's what Linda's setting up for, Henry said. Well, we better not keep her waiting then. Chapter 2. Bowman and Henry walked down the spiraling staircase of the lighthouse, a bit of a bounce in their steps at the prospect of having a ton of cargo sitting right offshore. The metal steps clanged under their boots as they descended, the sound echoing against the curved walls. Rays of sunlight streamed through the narrow windows, creating bands of gold across the stairwell. As they walked towards the gift shop, they spotted two more people coming their way. Norma was an older woman, looking like she'd had quite the life. Despite her age, she carried herself with strength and purpose. Matt was younger, looking like early 40s but with weathered features. His broad shoulders and calloused hands suggested someone who worked with them for a living. His clothes, while fresh, still contained a number of well-worn stains. Are you Matt? Henry asked. Yeah, you must be Henry. This is my friend Norma from Roanoke Island. I thought she might be of some help, Matt said. The more the merrier, and speaking of Mary, this cheery fellow is Bowman, Henry said. Oh, Bowman and I go way back, Norma said. Good to see you, Norma, Bowman said. Henry wasn't sure of what to make of the two knowing each other, but he put it out of his mind as they stepped into the gift shop. Linda had been hard at work, moving display shelves out of the way, setting up a large table in the middle with a map of the islands. She had marked it up with a wide variety of notes. Red circles highlighted certain areas, while blue X's marked others. "That's quite the display, Linda," Bowman said. "Get you a refill, Bowman, because I have a whole report ready to go," Linda said. Bowman nodded, motioning Matt and Norma towards the side area where a thermos of coffee sat. The three of them got some before joining Linda and Henry at the map. The rich aroma of the coffee filled the air, perking up the two newcomers. "Okay, Henry and I have been burning the candle at both ends over the last few days. But it has been productive, to say the least," Linda said. "I know we've had a lot of debate about what to do, and I think we've figured it out," Henry said. Henry pointed to the two bridges on Bodie Island, one just a few miles north of the current blockade, and one at the northern part of the island that led to the mainland. His finger traced the routes as he spoke, drawing everyone's attention to these crucial points. "We figure if we're able to block these two bridges off, that we'll have free reign on Bodie Island," Henry said. "Well, once we clear it out, of course. But at least no more of those things will be coming over." "That's a hell of a lift, though. Trying to block off those two bridges is going to be a beast," Bowman said. "I can't speak for the northern one, but Matt, why don't you tell Bowman what you told me?" Linda said. "The bridge over to Roanoke is blocked, at least most of the way," Matt said. "How do you know?" Bowman asked. "Because we were there when it was blocked," Norma said. "A tractor-trailer jackknifed, creating a hell of a pileup. I'm sure there's some holes that need to be plugged, but it's not going to be more than a few cars," Matt said. Bowman stared at the map, looking around at the area just before the bridge. His attention fell to an outlet mall less than a mile from it. He tapped the space a few times, certain this was the spot. There should be plenty of cars still there. "Even if we have to hook them up to tow trucks and drag them over, it's doable," Bowman said. "And I bet the people we left on top of the truck will be anxious to get out of there," Matt said. Bowman stared at Matt for a moment. "You left people on top of the truck?" Bowman asked. "We jumped. They didn't want to," Matt said. "Christ, we could have sent someone with a boat over to get them," Bowman said. "Don't worry, I'll handle it. Let's focus on the northern part of the island," Linda said. "Linda's right, because not only do we need to deal with the bridge, we also have to deal with the beach," Henry said. "I'm not worried about that," Bowman said. "It's wide open space. Most cars aren't going to be able to drive on it, but those people could still walk down it," Henry said. "Once you get past Ocean Hill, there's only a handful of people living up there. We can set up a checkpoint at the Kitty Hawk Pier and another at Ocean Hill. We'll be fine," Bowman said. "Now we just need to figure out a way to take care of the bridge," Norma said. "About that, I think I have a solution," Henry said. Henry walked over to the map, studying it for a moment before putting his finger down at the Kitty Hawk Dunes. The coastal area was marked in yellow on the map, with red arrows pointing to it. "This is where we're going to land. It's away from the highway, so I can't imagine there's going to be much resistance there," Henry said. Bowman and Matt exchanged a glance, not buying what Henry was selling. "That's a good 5-6 miles away from the bridge. If we have boats, why aren't we getting closer?" Matt asked. Henry smirked, tracing his finger along the road just to the north of the landing zone. "Because there's a supercenter grocery store half a mile to the north. I've been in touch with the manager there. They have the building completely secure and they have 2 tractor trailers parked in their loading bay," Henry said. Matt and Bowman again glanced at each other, letting out a shrug indicating they were buying into the plan. "It could certainly work," Bowman said. "A couple of those big boys on the bridge wedge a couple cars underneath them, and we've got ourselves a barricade," Matt said. "That's still going to be a hell of a run, though. We have to assume that the roads are going to be packed with those things," Norma said. "And we have a solution for that. At least a partial one," Henry said. Linda walked over to the checkout desk, grabbing a radio from behind it. She clicked it on, the static crackling through the speakers before she adjusted the frequency. "Hey, Violet, Nixon, are you on?" Linda asked. "Hey, Linda, we read you loud and clear," a female voice responded, breaking through the static. "Good, you're here with the rest of the group. Can you tell them what you told me last night?" Linda asked. "Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. My name's Violet, and my friend Nixon is here too," Violet said. Hey everybody, Nixon said. So we managed to get off of Roanoke Island when all this started, and we've been floating off the coast on the ocean side ever since, Violet said. One of our friends is trapped in a beachfront house close to one of the piers. We've been watching just in case they had a chance to get to the water. But the beach is packed with those things, Nixon said. Why are they all at the beach? Norma asked. Well, for the longest time they weren't. Then one of the other nearby boats started blasting music yesterday morning. I guess they wanted to rock out or whatever, but it drew a lot of them to the water, Violet said. How many? Bowman asked. 100, maybe more, Violet said. Violet, how many boats do you have out there? Bowman asked. We're not exactly close to anybody at the moment, but we've talked to at least a couple dozen in the last few days, Violet said. And you're in touch with them? Bowman asked. We are, Violet said. But we haven't heard from the flotilla in a couple of days, Nixon added. Flotilla? Bowman asked. Yeah, there were a bunch of boats together in the bay just off of Roanoke. We kind of brought some trouble to them, so I get why they don't want to talk to us, Nixon said. Don't worry about them, we'll take care of them. But this is what I want you to do. When we're done here, start calling all the other boats and get them lined up from the pier, headed to the north a few miles, Bowman said. Okay, we can do that. But what do we tell them? Violet asked. You tell them we're going to need their help because we're going to take back the island, Bowman said. How much time do we have? Violet asked. A few hours, Bowman said. We'll be ready when you are, Nixon said. Thank you, Bowman said. Bowman nodded to Linda, who walked away from the meeting, turning down the volume on the radio while talking into it. Her voice became a hushed murmur as she continued the conversation in private. So, how in the hell do we do this? Matt asked. I'm going to get my crew from the bridge, we're going to load up on as much ammunition as we can carry, and then we're going to head up to the drop zone, Bowman said. You want Jackson and those guys? Won't they be tired? Henry asked. They're sleeping in shifts up there, and besides, none of us have slept much since this began. Once we get running, we'll be all right, Bowman said. I'll come with you too, Matt said. Are you a good shot? Bowman asked. Not in the slightest, but I got charged cordless drills and I know how to handle myself, Matt said. Bowman stared at Matt for a moment, getting him to continue. Plus, I know how to drive a tractor trailer, Matt said. There we go, that's what I was looking for, Bowman said. So, what do we need to do? Henry asked. Henry, I want you and Linda to start calling people on the route from the grocery store to the north. Get the traffic report and start charting us a path to the bridge, Bowman said. We'll take care of it, Henry said. Good. Meet me down at the docks in Avon in 90 minutes. We'll be ready to go by then, Bowman said. Everyone nodded, snapping into gear as they set off to kick off their invasion of Bodie Island. Chapter 3. A little more than an hour later, Officer Bowman, Linda, Matt, Norma, and Henry pulled into the parking lot of the docks in Avon. They parked at the entrance, everybody piling out, except for Henry, who stayed behind the wheel. The morning sun beat down on them, reflecting off the water and creating shimmers of light across the bay. Bowman walked around to the truck, opening it up and pulling out an assault rifle before shutting it. The weight of the weapon felt reassuring in his hands as he checked the magazine. Do you have everything you need, Bowman? Henry asked. Just need the rest of my men. Other than that, we're good, Bowman said. Engaged. Okay, I'll head back to the lighthouse and let the boats know it's time to start the party on the ocean, Henry said. Have them keep it up for at least an hour, 2 if they can stand it, Bowman said. Then what? Henry asked. I don't know. Just have them on standby in case we need a diversion further north. Henry nodded before looking to Linda, who stepped over to the car, leaning over and giving him a big kiss. It went on for what felt like a little too long, prompting Norma to let out a playful "woo" sound. Yeah, get you some girl, Norma called out with a grin. Linda and Henry laughed. Be safe out there. I love you, Henry said, his expression growing serious. I love you too. And don't worry, I'm not getting off the boat, Linda assured him. Henry nodded and pulled out from the curb, passing by a pickup truck before getting back onto the road. His car disappeared around the bend, leaving the group to wait for the rest of their team. "There they are," Bowman said. Jackson drove the truck up to the others, parking in front of them. He jumped out along with Nathan and Brandon. Both of them were in their early 30s, not in the great shape Jackson was in, merely average. The first wore a hunting cap pulled low over his eyes, while the second had a scruffy beard that hadn't seen proper grooming in weeks. "I was wondering when you guys were showing up," Bowman said. "Sorry, Bowman, we had to swing by the house and get the extra ammo," Brandon explained. Brandon and Nathan reached into the bed of the truck, pulling out a heavy canvas bag filled with bullets, sidearms, and a collection of melee weapons like knives and bats. The metal clinked together as they lifted the bag, evidence of just how much firepower they'd brought. Jackson leaned up against the truck, looking at Bowman, shaking his head. "Something on your mind, Jackson?" Bowman asked. "Just wondering why in the hell we're storming the beaches like we're in Normandy instead of just driving up there. These trucks are heavy enough to plow through them," Jackson said. "Well, for starters, if you run into enough of those things, one of them's bound to get trapped in your wheel wells. Secondly, and most importantly, we're going to have to dismantle the barricade on the bridge to get the trucks we need out. And I don't want to leave the island open for a mob of those things to come in," Bowman said. "Still, going on foot just seems—" Jackson trailed off, not sure of the word he wanted to use, however. Bowman finished his thought for him. "Unnecessarily risky?" Bowman suggested. "I was thinking of something with a few more curse words, but yeah, that's the general idea," Jackson said. "Trust me, I'm not looking forward to storming the beaches either, but we need to get up to the grocery store without drawing a crowd with us. Once we get the bridges blocked off, we're going to bring the fight to them, street by street, just like we did in Avon," Bowman said. Jackson contemplated for a moment before nodding, the two men exchanging a fist bump as everybody came over. The camaraderie between them was evident, forged in the fires of survival over the past few days. "Are we ready to do this?" Nathan asked, adjusting his hunting cap. "As ready as we're ever going to be," Jackson replied. Bowman turned and led the group down the dock, spotting a boat at the far end. They made their way to it, jumping on board, Linda getting behind the controls. The vessel rocked gently beneath their feet as they distributed their weight evenly. "Everybody get comfortable. It takes a little while to get there," Linda said. As everyone got situated, she pulled out from the dock, picking up speed before getting out into the bay. The engine hummed steadily as they cut through the water, spray occasionally misting over the bow. Bowman, Matt, Jackson, Brandon, and Nathan checked their weapons, loading their hunting rifles and getting ammunition into easy-to-access pockets. They each took a melee weapon as well, with Matt taking a bat to go along with his two cordless drills. The group remained silent as they moved through the bay, everyone just enjoying the sun shining down on them, while trying to put the pending assault out of their mind. The water stretched out around them, deceptively peaceful, despite what lay just beyond on the dry land. As they approached the bridge leading over to Roanoke Island, Matt stood up and waved to Linda, getting her to slow down. As they did, the group looked up to the bridge, seeing that it was packed on both sides with zombies. They shuffled aimlessly along the edges, occasionally bumping into one another or the guardrails. "What are we doing?" Jackson asked impatiently. "Relax, this is only going to take a moment," Matt said. Matt walked over to the console, looking for the microphone, clicking the speaker on. He adjusted the volume before speaking. "Hey, Keith, are you still up there, buddy?" Matt called out, his voice amplified across the water. A few moments later, a tired-looking man walked to the edge of the tractor-trailer that was in the middle of the bridge. He looked around for a moment, spotting the boat, waving. His clothes were dirty and torn, but he appeared uninjured from this distance. "Good to see you're still alive and kicking. Hope your friends are doing well too," Matt said. Keith gave a thumbs up and tried to yell out, but was too far away for his words to be heard. He gestured excitedly, clearly relieved to see another living person. "Sorry, man, I can't hear you. But listen, my friend with the boat needs to go drop us off. But she's going to come back for you in a few minutes. She'll call out, then I'm going to need you to jump to the water. She'll take you someplace safe. Does that sound good?" Matt asked. Keith gave 2 thumbs up, jumping up and down a bit in excitement. His enthusiasm was visible even from their distance, a stark contrast to the shambling dead that surrounded the truck. "Good deal." "Just hang tight, man," Matt said. Matt replaced the mic, looking over to Linda. "Please make sure they get on board," Matt said. "Don't worry, Norma and I will take care of them," Linda reassured him. Matt nodded appreciatively as she got the boat back up to speed. As they got closer to the dunes, Matt spotted the flotilla in the distance, in the opposite direction of shore. He pointed it out to Linda, gesturing toward the collection of vessels bobbing on the horizon. "It can wait. You boys focus on what you need to do. I don't want to ride up to that northern bridge and have nobody to pick up," Linda said. Matt nodded and went back over to the others, who were geared up and ready for battle. Linda began to slow down as the landing spot got within view. The boat's engine quieted as they approached the shore. The shore only had a few creatures on it, having tumbled down from the top of the large dunes separating the beach from the main portion of the park. They moved sluggishly across the sand, their steps uneven and awkward on the shifting surface. "Okay, she's going to get us close to shore. You all follow me over. Take down those things quietly, then get up to the top of the hill, but by God, stay out of sight before going over. We need to know what we're walking into," Bowman instructed, his voice low but commanding. The men nodded and positioned themselves at the side of the boat. Linda pulled as close to shore as she could get without risking running aground. She came to a stop, calling out. "Get moving," Linda shouted. Bowman was the first man over, the water deep enough to reach his chest. The others followed suit, bouncing up and down as they pushed off the floor of the water. The cold shock of it made them gasp, but they pushed forward, determined. It took a few moments before they began picking up speed, getting far enough out of the water to really move well. The noise they made in the water drew the attention of the zombies. The creatures turned, fixing their vacant stares on the approaching men. Bowman ran straight for the one in the middle, gripping his baseball bat tightly before cracking the slow-moving ghoul over the head. The impact made a sickening sound as the skull gave way, the creature dropping to the sand without another movement. He looked to either side, watching as Jackson jammed a knife into the eye socket of a zombie that still had a little speed to it, while Matt used his bat to cave in a skull of a creature that was barely upright, let alone running. The attacks were efficient and silent, just as they'd planned. Everybody looked around, realizing they were alone on the beach before turning back to Linda and giving her a thumbs up. She hit the throttle, peeling out and heading back to the bridge to pick up Keith and the others. The boat's wake spread out behind it, the only evidence they'd been there at all. "All right, boys, top of the mound, let's go," Bowman commanded. The 5 men pumped their legs hard, their feet sinking into the sand dune as they ascended. Sweat began to form on their foreheads from the exertion, the loose sand making each step more difficult than the last. It took a few minutes before they were at the top, laying down to stay out of sight as they climbed to the threshold. The 5 of them looked out over the mostly flat park. There were dunes on either side of them, but the middle area was wide open. Rather than being empty like they had hoped, there were 100 creatures spread out over the span of a few hundred yards. They wandered aimlessly, with no apparent pattern to their movements, but their sheer numbers made crossing the open space a daunting prospect. Well, so much for this being easy. Chapter 4. The 5 men stared down at the horde of ghouls below. While they were spread out a pretty decent amount, forging a path through them would be difficult. Sunlight glinted off the occasional metal object or piece of jewelry worn by the zombies, creating eerie flashes of light across the open space. The men counted at least 100 of the creatures wandering across what had once been a serene park area, now transformed into a deadly obstacle course. They retreated back behind the cover of the dunes, laying on their backs to talk about the plan. Salt spray from the ocean carried on the breeze, mingling with the less pleasant sense of decay from beyond the dune. "Well, I'm open to ideas," Bowman said, wiping sweat from his brow. The morning heat was already building, promising a scorching day ahead. "Is this the only landing spot?" Matt asked, propping himself up on his elbows to look at the others. His construction-hardened hands idly sifted through the fine sand beside him. "The boat's already left, so it's not like we just ride up to the next opening," Brandon said. "Waiting in the water, maybe?" Matt suggested, gesturing toward the shoreline, where waves lapped gently against the sand. Follow it around until we find a clearer spot? A lot of that shore is going to be impassable. I think we're stuck here, Brandon said, shaking his head. As the others continued talking, Jackson climbed back up to the top, studying the scene intently. His mind was working overdrive, as if he was not only coming up with a plan, but actively forcing himself to believe it was a good one. He tuned out the others as they debated other options. After a moment, he snapped his fingers, an unexpected move that pulled all the attention towards him. The sharp sound cut through their hushed discussion, all eyes turning to Jackson's silhouette against the bright sky. "I know what we're doing," Jackson announced, sliding back down to join the group. His expression held a determined confidence that hadn't been there moments before. "Well, don't leave us in suspense, Jackson," Bowman said, sitting up straighter. He'd known Jackson long enough to recognize when the man had something solid brewing in his mind. "Those things are spread out pretty good, and I'm fast enough to cut through them," Jackson said, drawing a line in the sand with his finger to illustrate his planned route. "What about the rest of us?" Brandon asked, skepticism evident in his tone. He glanced at the others who shared his concern. "Not all of us can sprint like you." "Let me finish. I'm going to cut through them, get to the parking lot, and fire off a few shots. That'll keep the attention on me and clear you a path to the north to get to that neighborhood," Jackson explained, continuing to trace the route with his finger across his improvised sand map. "See this area here? Once I've drawn them south, you'll have a pretty clear shot through this section." "What the hell are you going to do after that?" Bowman asked. "In my mind, I'm fast enough to beat them to the neighborhood after you've gotten there. I can lose them after that," Jackson said, brushing sand from his hands. "Most of these things aren't exactly marathon runners. They'll follow the noise, and I'll circle around once you're clear." The others fell silent, uneasy about the plan. The only sound was the distant moaning of the zombies and the gentle rustle of the sea breeze through the beach grass. The risk to Jackson seemed unnecessarily high, even if it offered the rest of them a safer passage. Finally, Matt broke the silence, clearing his throat before speaking. "That sounds like a terrible idea, which is why I'm coming with you," Matt declared, reaching for his bat. His jaw was set with the same stubbornness that had kept him alive through the past few days. "Don't take offense to this, but I don't think you can keep up with me," Jackson said, eyeing Matt's stockier build. "Bitch, I work construction, and I expend more energy in a day than you do in a week," Matt shot back, his face flushing with defiance. "I haul 100-pound loads up scaffolding all day. I think I can handle a little sprint." "You're not going, Matt," Bowman said firmly, ending the debate with his authoritative tone. He placed a hand on Matt's shoulder, both restraining and reassuring. "Need someone to watch his back," Matt insisted, gesturing toward Jackson with his bat. "What if he gets surrounded? What if he gets cornered? 2 is better than 1 out there." "No, he doesn't. Besides, you and Brandon are my truck drivers, and I'm not risking either of you," Bowman said. "If we lose you two, this whole operation falls apart. We need those tractor trailers moved, and you're the only ones who can do it." Matt wasn't happy about it, but Jackson playfully punched him on the arm, trying to lighten the tension that had settled over the group. "Relax. It's not the first time I've been surrounded by those things. Plus, they're slowing down. At least, some of them are," Jackson said, as he trailed off, hoping that he was right. Before they could debate it any further, Jackson jumped over the top of the dune, sliding down it before hopping to his feet. The sand shifted beneath him as he steadied himself, preparing to run. Small cascades of sand followed in his wake as he descended the steep incline. He picked up speed, running straight for a creature who had its back turned to him. Jackson plowed into the ghoul, planting his shoulder into its back, knocking it to the ground. The impact sent a jarring shock through his body, but he pushed through it, maintaining his momentum. He kept running hard, getting into an empty section of the grounds, no zombie within 10 yards of him. His feet pounded against the ground, kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. Jackson stopped and let out a loud 2-finger whistle, getting the attention of every zombie within 50 yards of him. The shrill sound cut through the air, causing decaying heads to turn with unnerving synchronicity. He looked around, letting out a sigh as dozens of vacant eyes turned in his direction. Creatures that had been aimlessly wandering suddenly found purpose, all focusing on the living flesh that had announced its presence so boldly. "Yeah, Jackson, this was a much better idea in your head," he muttered to himself, already regretting the whistle. Jackson let out some curses under his breath before turning and sprinting towards the parking lot. Several zombies got within arm's reach of him, but his size and speed allowed him to move past them unscathed. One creature lunged for him, fingers grasping at empty air as Jackson dodged to the side. The stench of decay filled his nostrils as he pushed past another ghoul, its rotting face inches from his as he maneuvered around it. Jackson got close to the parking lot, spotting a small dune on his left, running over to it. The elevated position would give him a momentary advantage. He scurried up it, turning around and catching his breath, watching as the zombies continued shambling in his direction. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his chest heaving as he tried to regain his composure. His attention was pulled to two zombies that were a little fresher than the rest, moving at a solid running speed. Their movements were more coordinated, their bodies less decayed than many of the others. As they got close, he pulled his handgun, aimed carefully, and fired. The first bullet ripped through the skull of the creature, sending it crumpling to the ground in a motionless heap. The second shot hit the other ghoul in the chest. While it wasn't a kill shot, it must have hit the spine because the zombie collapsed onto the ground. Its limbs went limp, but its head continued to move, jaws snapping futilely at the air above it. Jackson looked back to the others, watching them disappear into the neighborhood to the north. They moved quickly and quietly, taking advantage of the distraction he'd created. Just as he'd hoped, the majority of the zombies were now focused on him, leaving a relatively clear path for Bowman and the others. The first part of his plan had worked perfectly. "That's my cue," Jackson said, checking his handgun's magazine to assess how many rounds he had left. Jackson ran down the dune, making sure to not lose his balance. The loose sand made for treacherous footing, and a fall now could be fatal with so many of the creatures closing in. As he got to flat land, he raised his handgun and fired a shot point blank into a fast-moving zombie that had managed to get ahead of the others. The bullet blew out the back of its head, clearing the immediate path for him. The zombies continued swarming him, most of them shambling in his direction, getting within a few yards of him. Their collective moans created an unsettling chorus that seemed to surround him from all sides. Jackson continued running, darting from side to side to avoid outstretched hands. He got halfway across the open space before facing a wall of creatures. They were staggered slightly, but essentially lined up shoulder to shoulder, forming an unbroken line of decaying bodies blocking his path. There was no way around them, and trying to push through such a dense group would be suicide. He raised his handgun, opening fire, knowing that noise would only attract more but having no other option. He emptied half the magazine, blowing out the back of several zombies' heads. The bodies dropped to the ground, creating a narrow corridor through the line of the dead. This gave him just enough room to run through the line, stepping over the fallen as he continued his sprint toward the tree line. There were only a smattering of zombies between him and the line of trees that led to a neighborhood. He picked up speed, looking over his shoulder to see every zombie within sight trailing him. A handful of them were runners, but they continually got tripped up by the slower-moving ghouls, buying him some time. It was an unexpected advantage, one that Jackson was grateful for as he pushed himself toward the tree line. Jackson navigated through the trees, emerging into the neighborhood, which had zombies coming in his direction. One ran up to him quickly, forcing him to duck down to avoid getting tackled. The ghoul staggered past him, its momentum carrying it several feet beyond where Jackson had been. The creature's confusion at grabbing nothing but air gave Jackson a momentary advantage, letting him dart forward and swing the bat hard, caving in the side of its skull, dropping it. Jackson looked around for ideas, knowing he needed to get the zombies off his trail. Think, man. Think. Jackson looked around the neighborhood, spotting nothing but zombies coming in his direction. Houses lined the street, most with doors and windows securely shut. No easy access there. Cars sat abandoned in driveways, some with doors open but none offering a definitive solution to his problem. Finally, inspiration took hold as he saw a boat laying on its side, the truck that had been pulling it wrecked on the side of the road. Jackson ran over to the boat, cracking a couple slower-moving zombies over the head with his bat as he went. Each impact made a sickening sound, but he didn't slow to confirm the kills. He trusted his strength and aim to have done the job. The boat was his target now, and everything else was just an obstacle to be overcome. Jackson reached the boat, running straight for the console that was eye level near the middle of the smaller boat. The control panel was intact, seemingly undamaged, despite the vessel's unceremonious position on the roadside. Come on, be here," Jackson whispered frantically, his fingers racing over the various switches and buttons on the console. Jackson scanned the console, finally seeing radio controls. He flicked it on, relieved to see it power up. A small light illuminated, indicating that the battery still had juice. "Bingo, we're in business," Jackson said triumphantly, allowing himself a brief smile. Jackson flipped a few switches before grabbing the receiver. He clicked it on, and a deafening siren began blaring out of the speakers. The alarm was meant for emergencies on the water, a distress signal to attract attention from other vessels. Now it would serve a very different purpose. He gently set the receiver on the dash so that the siren continued going off. The piercing wail echoed through the neighborhood, bouncing off houses and creating an overwhelming noise that no zombie could ignore. Jackson took off running down the next side street, getting into a hiding spot, watching as the runners that had been pursuing him pushed their way through the trees. He crouched behind a car, controlling his breathing to remain as quiet as possible while observing the creature's reactions to his improvised distraction. Much to his relief, they took the bait, every single one of them running towards the siren on the boat. The faster zombies led the charge, moving with surprising speed toward the source of the noise. Slowly but surely, the other zombies in the area began making their way to it as well. They shambled along, drawn by the irresistible call of the siren, their previous pursuit of Jackson completely forgotten. All right, time to catch up to the others. Chapter 5. Bowman led Matt, Brandon, and Nathan through the neighborhood streets. The foursome stuck close to cover, opting for stealth over direct confrontation. They moved from house to house, using carports and trash bins to shield their approach, pausing at each new corner to scan for creatures before proceeding. Despite their best efforts, a handful of zombies still crossed their paths. Much to their relief, they were the slow-moving, shambling variety, easily taken down with well-placed strikes to the head. Nathan dispatched one with a swift bat swing that cracked its skull like an egg, while Brandon used his hunting knife to penetrate the temple of another. Each kill was performed methodically, with minimal noise, to avoid drawing more attention. As they pushed on, the siren that Jackson had set off behind them continued to fade. Despite the distance, the noise was still working to attract creatures in that direction. Occasionally, they'd spot zombies in the distance, all moving toward the sound rather than toward the four men. Bowman got the group within view of the shopping center where the Supercenter grocery store was. With a nod, he got the others to follow him into the carport of a house for cover. Bowman waved his hand, getting the others to fan out and look around for zombies. Each man took a position around the perimeter of the carport, checking for any immediate threats that might have followed them or been lurking nearby. They all turned back to him after checking, shaking their heads to let him know the coast was clear. The officer spoke in low tones, not wanting to risk his voice carrying. "Okay, hang tight while I make the call, and keep an eye out for Jackson." The men nodded and formed a perimeter while staying behind cover, keeping watch as Bowman pulled his phone out, which was in a plastic freezer bag, for protection from the water. He scrolled through the contacts before finding the grocery store entry. The screen was cracked from a previous encounter, but still functional, a small miracle given everything they had been through. He hit dial, lowering the volume on the phone before pulling it to his ear. After a few rings, a young woman answered, her voice surprisingly composed given the circumstances. "Supercenter grocery store, this is Gail," she answered, sounding for all the world like this was just another day at work. Bowman chuckled at Gail's tone, which sounded like any other day. "If I didn't know better, I'd say you're still open for business." Gail chuckled. "Sorry, old habits die hard." "No worries, Gail. This is Officer Bowman. I was told to give you a call once my team and I were close," Bowman said. keeping his voice low while scanning the surrounding area. "Yeah, Henry and Linda said you'd be coming up this morning," Gale confirmed. "So, what's going to be the best way for us to get inside?" "I'm assuming the front entrance is a mess," Bowman asked, peering around the edge of the carport to get another look at the building, which was obscured by trees. "That's an understatement. The rear entrance isn't much better, I'm afraid," Gale replied. "We have plenty of firepower. Is it possible to clear a path?" Bowman asked. "Not unless you brought a dozen guys with you," Gale said flatly. "I'm afraid I didn't," Bowman admitted, looking at his small team spread around the carport. "It's okay. Let me ask you, officer, how do you feel about climbing?" Gale asked. "It's not my first choice, but I think I can manage," Bowman said. "Good. There's a ladder on the southern end of the building. There's a cover over the first few rungs, but a small boost should be able to get you up to it," Gale explained. "Okay, that sounds doable, but then what?" Bowman asked. "My people will create a distraction at the north side of the building. We should be able to hold them in place while you get across the roof. The drop down to the trucks is only about 10 feet. The keys are on the dash," Gale said. "Sounds like you've thought of everything, Gale," Bowman said, impressed by the woman's thoroughness. "We also packed you up a bag lunch that we can throw to you from the bay doors," Gale added unexpectedly. Bowman laughed a bit, drawing confusion from the others. The absurd normalcy of the offer, bag lunches in the middle of the apocalypse, struck him as funny. The officer waved them over as he put the finishing touches on the call. "Whatever they're paying you, Gale, it's not enough," Bowman said appreciatively. "Tell me about it. You just let me know when you're ready to move," Gale replied. "Give us just a few minutes, then start making noise," Bowman instructed. "You got it, officer. Good luck," Gale said before disconnecting. Bowman hung the phone up as the others walked back over to him. They gathered in a tight circle, heads bent together, to hear his instructions without raising his voice. "So what's the plan?" Matt asked. "The people in the store are going to create a diversion, letting us get over to the ladder on the side of the building. Then it's over and down to the trucks," Bowman explained. "Sounds easy enough," Nathan remarked. Before anybody else could chime in, they heard footsteps running towards them from up the road. The sound immediately put them on high alert, weapons raised in anticipation of a threat. A few tense seconds later, Jackson ran by. He skidded to a stop, sliding on some sand on the road after spotting them out of the corner of his eye. Jackson scrambled back to his feet, running towards the others, calling out as he went. His clothes were torn and dirty, evidence of his difficult journey to catch up with them. "Help, help, help!" Jackson yelled, waving his arms frantically. The others moved forward, parting so that Jackson could run through their lines. A moment later, 4 zombies ran into view, turning towards the group, letting out satisfied moans as they approached. Unlike the shambling creatures they'd encountered earlier, these moved with purpose and speed, their limbs coordinated in pursuit of fresh prey. Nathan and Brandon rushed forward, Nathan swinging his bat and connecting with a zombie's head. The impact made a sickening crack as the skull gave way, dropping the creature instantly. Brandon used his shoulder to slam into the chest of another zombie, lifting it off its feet and driving it backwards into the other one, sending them both to the ground. Matt pulled one of his drills, standing firm as the creature got within arm's reach. He grabbed it by the shirt while shoving the spinning drill into its forehead. The construction tool made a horrific grinding noise as it connected with bone. The bit spun, piercing through the skull and sending a spurt of blood flying through the air. He shoved the body back, sending it to the ground before running over to Brandon, who was holding the other 2 ghouls on the pavement. Brandon's muscular arms strained as he pinned the thrashing zombies, his face contorted with the effort of keeping them subdued. Matt drew his other drill, pushing both tools to foreheads of the thrashing creatures. With a trigger pull, the drill bits cracked through the skulls, ending the threat. The sound of the drills cutting through bone and brain matter was nauseating, but effective. Both zombies went limp immediately. "Thanks, man," Brandon said, pushing himself up from the ground. "Anytime. Come on, let's get moving," Matt replied, shaking gore from his drill bits. The 3 of them walked over to Jackson, who was catching his breath beside Bowman. Jackson was bent over, hands on his knees, his chest heaving with exertion. "You all right, Jackson?" Nathan asked with concern. Jackson continued panting, holding a single finger in the air, asking for another second. The sprint had clearly pushed him to his limits, especially after all the running he'd already done to create the diversion. Finally, he caught his breath enough to speak. "Sorry about that, guys. I lost most of them around the houses, but those runners just didn't want to give up," Jackson explained between gasps for air. "That was some fine work back there, Jackson. Just don't ever do that again," Bowman said with a hint of a smile. Jackson laughed, giving Bowman a thumbs up. Despite his exhaustion, he seemed pleased with himself for having pulled off his risky gambit. "Come on, let's get over to those trucks," Bowman said, gesturing toward the grocery store in the distance. Bowman led the group out from cover, moving quickly towards a row of trees that separated the neighborhood from the strip mall. The trees provided a natural barrier and concealment, allowing them to approach without being easily spotted by the wandering dead. They stopped behind cover, getting a lay of the land. The southern side of the building was 30 yards away, with a handful of zombies scattered about. In the distance, they could hear banging and yelling coming from the grocery store. The sound of metal hitting metal rang out across the parking lot, followed by shouted taunts and whistles. The grocery store workers were creating their diversion, and it was working. They let the noise persist for a few moments, watching as the zombies near their side of the building shamble off towards the source of the sound. The creatures moved with single-minded focus, drawn inexorably to the commotion at the other end of the building. After a minute, it was mostly a clear path to the ladder. Bowman led them out, gripping a bat tightly as he approached one zombie who wasn't interested in the noise. The creature was slower than the others, its movements uncoordinated and sluggish. With a quick swing, he ended its unlife. Bowman got the group around to the back of the building, pointing out the ladder and motioning for the others to start climbing. The metal rungs extended up the side of the building, though the bottom section was covered by an anti-climbing guard, a simple metal plate designed to prevent unauthorized access to the roof in more normal times. Jackson took a crouching position beside it, interlacing his fingers to create a step. "I'll boost you guys up," he offered. One by one, the men took turns using Jackson's boost to reach above the grate covering the bottom few rungs, grabbing on and pulling themselves up. Matt went first, his construction-trained arms easily pulling his weight up the ladder once he had a grip. Brandon followed, then Nathan, each man quickly scaling the ladder and disappearing onto the roof. Once the other three were climbing, Jackson clicked his tongue, getting Bowman's attention. The officer came over, getting boosted up and began climbing. Jackson backed up, getting a running start before jumping up and grabbing onto the bottom rung. It took a little bit of a struggle, but he managed to get up to the top. His muscles protested the exertion after all the running he'd already done, but determination won out as he hauled himself over the edge of the roof. As he got to the top, he spotted the other four, who were at the front, looking out towards the highway. He walked over to join them, his footsteps crunching on the gravel-covered rooftop. Jackson began to say something but fell silent when he saw what they were seeing. The panoramic view from the roof revealed the full extent of the situation they faced. The parking lot in front of the grocery store at the northern end of the building was packed with zombies, easily 100. They milled about in a dense crowd, still trying to get in through the front door. Several wandered off back towards the highway, which was a mixture of wrecked cars and more zombies. The road was virtually impassable, with vehicles scattered haphazardly across all lanes. "Well, that looks like fun," Jackson remarked, surveying the scene with a mixture of weariness and resignation. "Don't worry, those trucks can push through all of that," Matt said confidently. "Let's hope so, because I've had my fill of running through those things," Jackson replied, rubbing a sore spot on his shoulder. Bowman spoke up forcefully, bringing everyone to attention. "Come on, we're burning daylight. Let's get to those trucks." Chapter 6. Bowman hung on tightly to Brandon and Jackson as they lowered him towards the truck below. The metal roof of the tractor-trailer was just out of comfortable jumping distance, necessitating the human chain to safely get him down. With a nod, they let go, allowing him to drop the last few feet. He landed solidly on the roof of the tractor-trailer, steadying himself before walking away from the wall. The metal surface was hot beneath his boots, having baked in the morning sun for hours. On either side were a few dozen creatures, all of whom were clamoring to get inside the open bay doors. Their grasping hands and gnashing teeth were just a few feet away, though well below the height they'd need to reach the roof of the truck. The majority were towards the corner of the building where the store employees had the bay door fully open. They stood back from the entrance, yelling and taunting the creatures who weren't smart enough or physically capable of climbing up. The distraction was working perfectly, drawing the zombies away from the trucks and keeping them occupied. A moment later, a familiar voice called out from the bay door on the other side of the truck. "I see you got here all right. Were there any issues?" Gail asked, leaning slightly out of the bay door. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Despite the chaos surrounding them, she maintained a surprisingly upbeat demeanor. Smooth as silk, only had a couple of stragglers that were easy enough to take out. The hardest part was climbing up the ladder, Bowman replied, stretching his shoulder where the exertion had left him sore. "Feeling it in those old bones of yours, officer?" Gail asked with a smirk. Gail spoke playfully, and before Bowman could respond, Matt landed on the top of the truck, chiming in. His boots made a loud thump against the metal as he steadied himself, finding his balance on the surface. "Don't let Bowman here fool you. He's a physical specimen," Matt declared, glancing between Gail and Bowman. Matt trailed off for a moment before continuing on, allowing the words to hang in the air for dramatic effect. "Well, for a man his age anyway," he finished with a grin. "Hey, it's not like you're a spring chicken, buddy," Bowman shot back, squaring his shoulders defensively. "Yeah, but I'm not the one trying to look good in front of the pretty lady," Matt said. Matt turned over to Gail, giving her a playful wink before walking over to the cab. Bowman let out a defeated sigh, knowing that the construction worker got the better of him. Even in the apocalypse, some things never changed, workplace ribbing being chief among them. "Here, officer, catch," Gail called out. Gail reached down to a plastic bag beside her, underarming it up forcefully towards the top of the truck. Her aim was true, landing right in the officer's arms. Bowman opened it up, revealing a collection of drinks, as well as several items rolled up in foil. He reached in, feeling that they were hot. The smell of cooked meat and spices wafted up, making his stomach growl in response. "What do we have here?" Bowman asked, peering into the bag with undisguised interest. "We made some breakfast steak tacos this morning. Saved a few for you," Gail explained, leaning against the doorframe. The grocery store's well-stocked freezers and their makeshift kitchen cobbled together from the cookout section had been a boon for the survivors holed up inside. Matt looked back to Bowman, who immediately shielded the bag from him. The possessive gesture was half serious, half joking. "Oh, hell no, these are mine," Bowman said firmly. Now, Bowman, I can't imagine the young lady likes men who are selfish," Matt admonished playfully, eyeing the bag of tacos. Bowman glanced down to Gail, who was amused by the entire situation. She gave a playful shrug, causing Bowman to shake his head in resignation. Behind them, Nathan and Jackson were making their way down to the truck, but seemed content to let this drama play out without interference. "Fine, but if there's an odd number, I get the extra one," Bowman conceded grudgingly. Matt let out a laugh as he motioned for Bowman to get moving. "Come on, officer, we got some driving to do." Bowman turned back to Gail, his expression growing more serious. "Thank you for your help, Gail. Just sit tight. It might be another day or two before we can get back up here to rescue you. Just give me a call beforehand and I'll make sure I have a care package ready to go," Gail replied, giving the officer a wink. Bowman nodded to Gail, holding up the bag of tacos in thanks. He then joined Matt at the cab, carefully climbing in through the window, getting situated in the passenger seat. The cab was spacious but worn, with cracked vinyl seats and a dashboard covered in dust. The keys were on the dash, as promised. "Now, you weren't lying when you said you could drive one of these, right?" Bowman asked, buckling his seatbelt. Matt side-eyed Bowman, pretending to be offended by the question. His hands moved confidently over the controls, displaying a familiarity that suggested he hadn't been exaggerating his experience. "Just give me a taco and buckle up," Matt replied, extending his hand expectantly. Bowman handed over a taco, which Matt dove into, biting off half of it in a single bite. As he chewed, he started the truck up, allowing it to rumble to life and idle for a moment. The diesel engine vibrated the entire cab, a reassuring sign of raw power that would hopefully see them through the obstacles ahead. Matt looked over to the other truck, which started up with Brandon behind the wheel. The other two men crammed inside. They gave him a thumbs up, motioning for him to go. Their truck was similar to Matt and Bowman's, a standard semi-cab with trailer attached, though theirs was branded with a different delivery company's logo. "Hang on, because here we go," Matt warned, shifting the truck into gear. Matt hit the gas. The truck lurched forward as he made the turn towards the southern end of the building. The initial movement was rough, betraying Matt's rustiness with the vehicle, but he quickly adjusted and smoothed out the driving. He got halfway down, checking the mirror to make sure Brandon was following, which he was. Matt made the turn to the side of the building, a couple of zombies bouncing harmlessly off the front grille. The truck barely registered the impacts, the creatures no match for several tons of metal and momentum. There was a sickening thud as they were knocked aside, but neither man in the cab showed much reaction. They'd become somewhat desensitized to such things out of necessity. Matt picked up speed, but keeping it reasonable since he knew a turn onto the highway was coming up ahead. The noise from the trucks drew the attention of a lot of zombies in the parking lot and on the highway, all of whom came their way. Their shuffling forms turned toward the sound, moving with varying degrees of speed toward this new stimulus. A smattering of runners broke away from the pack, getting to the truck before the others. One by one, they were knocked aside by the giant vehicle, a couple getting crushed underneath the wheels. The truck shuddered slightly with each impact, but powered through without slowing. Matt got to the highway, holding the wheel tightly as they slammed into a car blocking the intersection. The collision sent the smaller vehicles spinning away, clearing their path. Zombies continued smacking their hands on the trailer in a futile attempt to slow it down. "How's our friend doing back there?" Bowman asked, turning to look at the side mirror. Matt checked his mirrors, confirming that Brandon's truck was still right behind them. "Still with us. He's handling that rig better than I expected." The road ahead was cluttered with abandoned and wrecked cars, with zombies wandering around. However, there was enough of a path for Matt to navigate through without much concern. He weaved the massive vehicle between obstacles with surprising dexterity, occasionally clipping a car but never losing momentum. As they went, the two men looked around at their surroundings, keeping a mental tally of the zombies they spotted, which quickly grew into the hundreds before they abandoned the exercise. The creatures were everywhere, shambling between cars, emerging from buildings, converging on the noise of the trucks. It was a sobering sight, a stark reminder of just how bad things had gotten and how much work they had ahead. "This is going to be a bitch to clear out," Matt observed, grimacing as they passed a particularly dense cluster of the dead. "Don't worry, I have ideas," Bowman said confidently. "Well, I hope they're good ones, because we're going to need more than guys standing in the back of pickup trucks with pointy sticks," Matt replied skeptically. "How about guys standing in the back of pickup trucks with enough firepower to conquer a third-world nation?" Bowman suggested with a hint of enthusiasm. Bowman pointed to the right side of the road at a large standalone building. The sign was nothing more than a giant gun, perfectly illustrating what they sold. The weapons store stood relatively intact, its reinforced doors and windows still secure despite the apocalypse that had engulfed the surrounding area. "That would be great if we could get in," Matt said, deflating Bowman's optimism. Matt pointed to the parking lot, which was filled with zombies. At least 30 of the creatures milled about outside the gun store, likely drawn there by the sound of people trying to break in during the early days of the outbreak. Or perhaps they were the very people who had attempted to arm themselves, only to be turned in the process. "One problem at a time," Bowman insisted. Bowman pointed to the road ahead, which was blocked entirely by wrecked cars. Matt adjusted course, hitting the spot where two vehicles had hit head-on. The truck's massive grille was designed to push and clear obstacles, and Matt aimed directly for the point where the cars met. The impact jolted both men forward, but managed to knock both cars out of their path. The engine squealed in protest but kept going. Metal screeched against metal as the cars were pushed aside, their lighter frames no match for the truck's weight and power. They continued going for another few miles until they spotted the sign for the northern bridge which led to the mainland. The span stretched out ahead of them, a concrete and steel artery to the wider world beyond their island sanctuary, one they knew they had to plug up if they were going to stand a chance of securing things. As they got the bridge in sight, Bowman called out urgently, "Stop the truck! Stop the truck!" he exclaimed, slapping his hand against the dashboard. Matt slammed on the brakes, even if he wasn't exactly sure why. The truck's air brakes hissed loudly as they engaged, bringing the massive vehicle to a surprisingly quick stop. The road ahead was mostly clear, only a smattering of zombies on the bridge, nothing they couldn't handle. "What the hell is it?" Matt asked, irritation evident in his voice as he scanned for whatever threat had prompted Bowman's outcry. "Look on the right," Bowman directed, pointing emphatically. Matt looked over, spotting a small building that used to be a gas station, now a converted used car lot. The faded sign still advertised Harvey's Gas and Snacks, though a newer banner declared quality pre-owned vehicles beneath it. A dozen vehicles sat in the lot, along with a collection of zombies that had begun taking notice at the rumbling vehicles. Most of the cars appeared to be in decent condition, sedans, SUVs, and a couple of pickup trucks, all arranged in neat rows. "Get to the bridge. We won't be far behind," Bowman instructed, already unbuckling his seatbelt. "What?" Matt asked, confusion evident in his expression. "Just do it. Trust me," Bowman insisted, his tone brooking no argument. Matt nodded as Bowman threw open the truck door, yelling out to the others in the truck behind them. Brandon had stopped their vehicle just behind Matt's, and Bowman was frantically gesturing toward the car lot. As soon as the officer was clear, Matt hit the gas, picking up speed. As they approached the bridge, Matt rolled down his window, thrusting his arm to the left several times so that Brandon got into the other lane. The bridge was broken up into two portions, 2 lanes on either side going in opposite directions. Matt took the right, Brandon on the left. The concrete barrier between the two sides was about waist high, enough to keep traffic separated but not impede visibility between the lanes. Matt drove a couple hundred yards onto the bridge, Brandon following suit. A handful of zombies smacked against the grill as they went, while others narrowly missed being taken out. The creatures had no survival instinct, making no attempt to dodge the approaching vehicles. Once they were sufficiently over the water, Matt laid on the horn, getting Brandon to slow down with him. He then moved the truck into position so that it blocked up both lanes. The maneuver required some precision, angling the truck just right to create an impassable barrier. Brandon positioned his truck similarly on the other side, effectively blocking all 4 lanes of the bridge. A handful of zombies were down the bridge, shambling in their direction, but still a good half-mile away. They posed no immediate threat, though eventually they would reach the blockade. Matt jumped out of the truck, looking back the way they came, hoping that Bowman and the others weren't far behind. While he didn't see them coming, he could hear gunshots popping off in the distance. "Come on, Bowman. Don't mess this up now." Chapter 7. Bowman's boots hit the ground, slamming the truck door behind him. The impact sent a jolt up his legs, a reminder that he wasn't as young as he used to be. He turned to Brandon's truck just behind them, whistling and pointing to the passengers in the cab. His sharp, commanding gesture left no room for confusion about what he wanted. He didn't have to issue a command, as both Jackson and Nathan understood the objective. They were already climbing out of the cab, weapons at the ready. The point hammered home as Bowman rushed towards a zombie that was shambling near the edge of the used car lot. With a swing of his bat, the head caved in, dropping the threat. The sickening crunch was followed by the dull thud of the body hitting the pavement, one more creature that would never rise again. The other 2 men joined him, a little confused by the sudden detour from their original plan. They scanned the car lot, taking in the handful of zombies wandering between vehicles who were shambling in their direction. All 3 men thankful none of them were runners. "What in the hell are we doing out here, man?" Nathan asked. "We're stealing some cars to wedge underneath the trucks. I want that barricade to hold long enough for us to come back up and reinforce it," Bowman explained, already surveying the lot for suitable vehicles. Nathan nodded, all three of them glancing over their shoulders, watching as the tractor trailers vanished around a curve. The distant rumble of the engines faded, leaving them alone with the shuffling dead in the car lot. "So, are we doing this quietly?" Jackson asked, eyeing a zombie that was getting closer with each step. Bowman looked out over the lot, spotting a dozen zombies, none of them thankfully moving fast. Most were the slower, shambling variety that had become more common in recent days. He looked up and down the road, only seeing a smattering of creatures that were spread out, not enough to pose a significant threat. "Screw it, cut 'em down," Bowman ordered decisively. Bowman flipped the assault rifle off his shoulder, getting it into the firing position. The weight of the weapon was familiar and reassuring in his hands. The other two readied their hunting rifles, following their leader into battle. Bowman ran up towards a sedan, leaping up onto the roof and taking aim. The elevated position gave him a clear line of sight across the entire lot. It was like a carnival shooting gallery, the creatures moving slowly, allowing him to pick them off one by one with ease. Each shot found its mark, dropping zombies with ruthless efficiency. 4 of them dropped to the ground before Nathan and Jackson managed to get off a single shot. The crack of Bowman's rifle was followed by the deeper boom of Nathan's hunting rifle, then Jackson's. All 3 men unloaded for a solid minute, picking their targets and dropping the threats. The gunshots echoed across the empty highway, a sound that would undoubtedly draw more of the creatures to their position. As the guns fell silent, Bowman looked back down the road, spotting a handful of creatures coming their way. 2 of them were runners, breaking out ahead of the pack, but still a good quarter-mile away. "You two wait here and deal with them when they get here. I'm going to grab the keys," Bowman instructed, already moving toward the small office building. Nathan and Jackson nodded, keeping their elevated positions as Bowman jumped to the ground. He slung his rifle over his shoulder, drawing his handgun and running towards the building. The small office stood at the edge of the lot, its windows covered with faded advertisements for financing options and "no credit, no problem" deals. He looked through the window, seeing no signs of struggle inside. The interior was undisturbed, suggesting that whoever had been working there when everything went to hell had simply left, rather than dying on the job. With a well-placed shot, he broke open the simple lock, plowing through the door. The office area was small, stagnant. The air was thick with dust, making Bowman wrinkle his nose as he entered. It took him a moment to locate the key box on the wall, throwing it open and looking at the car info on the tag. The small metal cabinet contained dozens of keys, each with a tag identifying the corresponding vehicle. Bowman scanned them quickly, looking for keys that would serve their purpose. Too big, too small. "All right, here we go," Bowman muttered to himself as he sorted through the options. Bowman grabbed the keys for 3 sedans, which sat lower to the ground and would be easy to wedge underneath the tractor trailers the others were getting into position. The compact cars would be perfect for creating a more solid barricade, making it impossible for zombies to crawl under the trucks. Bowman headed back to the door, hearing a few rifle shots going off. As he reached the parking lot, the others jumped down to join him. The runners had arrived, but had been dispatched with well-placed headshots. He tossed the keys over to the other men. "Get in the cars and let's move," Bowman ordered. The 3 men hit the unlock buttons on their key fobs, spotting their rides by the flashing lights and beeping sounds. They ran to the cars, starting them up and peeling out from the parking lot. They raced down the highway towards the bridge, which was just up ahead. The road was mostly clear here, allowing them to build up speed quickly. Jackson and Bowman stayed to the right, while Nathan went to the left onto the southbound bridge, which was separated by a concrete barrier. They spotted the trailers about halfway up on the bridge, over the water. Matt waved to Bowman, letting him know they were all right. The trucks were positioned perpendicular to the lanes, effectively blocking all traffic in both directions. The 3 men pulled their sedans up close to the trucks, stopping just shy. Bowman jumped out, throwing the car into neutral and yelling out to the others. "Give me a hand pushing this thing," he called, already positioning himself at the rear bumper. Matt raced over, pushing on the heavy car alongside Bowman, getting it rolling with enough momentum to wedge itself underneath the undercarriage of the truck. The sedan slid into place, its roof coming to rest against the bottom of the trailer. They raced back to do the same with Jackson's car, repeating the process until it too was firmly wedged beneath the trailer. They looked at their handiwork, nodding approvingly. The combination of the massive trailers and the cars underneath created a formidable barrier. "There's still some holes, but I think it'll hold until we can get back up to reinforce it," Bowman said, wiping sweat from his brow. A loud whistle bellowed from the other side of the bridge. They looked over to see Nathan and Brandon giving them the thumbs up, their sedan parked horizontally under the truck. While it wasn't perfect, it was better than it was just a few minutes prior. "Do we need to get another one?" Brandon called out across the divide. "It's good enough. Do you see the boat?" Bowman shouted back. Nathan ran over to the edge, looking down and spotting Norma and Linda in the boat floating below. The small vessel bobbed gently on the waves, positioned perfectly for their escape. Norma waved up at them, gesturing for them to hurry. "Yep, we're good. Come on," Nathan confirmed, already moving back toward the edge. "All right, boys, everybody overboard. It's time to go home," Bowman announced, collecting his rifle and securing it across his back. The men moved over to the edge of the bridge, looking down to make sure the landing zone was clear. The water sparkled below them, the midday sun reflecting off the surface. It was a long drop, not all that higher than the cliff jump at the nearby water park. One by one they jumped over, splashing down into the cool water below. It took several minutes for them all to swim over to the boat, getting pulled on board by Norma and Linda. Their clothes clung to them, water streaming from their hair and faces as they collapsed onto the deck. Jackson, Bowman, and Matt were relatively unscathed, however. Nathan and Brandon were both gasping for air. The exertion of the swim had clearly taken its toll on the two men. "Oh, that sucked 6 ways from Sunday," Brandon complained, between gasps for breath. "I knew it was going to suck, but my God, that was a terrible idea," Nathan added, equally miserable as he tried to catch his breath. Norma stepped over to them, taking a knee beside them. Her weathered face showed little sympathy for their complaints. She'd seen too much in her life to coddle grown men over a little discomfort. "Will you two pussies suck it up? I made that jump not 4 days ago, and I'm older than both of you put together," Norma scolded, her tone sharp, but with a hint of amusement. Both Brandon and Nathan snapped up, stopped whining after getting shown up by the older Norma. They looked at her, giving a subtle, apologetic nod. There was something about Norma's no-nonsense attitude that commanded respect. "Good, now come on, let's get you back home and out of those wet clothes before you catch a cold. Because Lord knows I don't need to have you whining for days on end," Norma added, patting Nathan on the shoulder as she stood up. Norma looked back to Linda, who was behind the controls, giving her a thumbs up. Linda hit the throttle, getting them turned around and headed back to the south. The boat cut through the water smoothly, leaving a white wake behind them as they picked up speed. The bridge grew smaller in the distance, the barricade they'd constructed barely visible from this angle. As they went across the bay, Matt walked over to Linda. He steadied himself against the control console, his soaked clothes dripping onto the deck. "Were you able to get Keith and the others from the bridge?" Matt asked with concern in his voice. "Yep, got 'em back to Avon safe and sound. They were a little malnourished, but they're getting checked out and fed," Linda replied, her eyes fixed on the water ahead. "Good. And the flotilla?" Matt inquired. Linda fell silent, getting a distressed look on her face, which Matt noticed immediately. Her hands tightened on the controls, knuckles whitening with tension. "What happened?" Matt asked gently. Linda hesitated for another moment before finally speaking. "We rode over to it after dropping you off. There wasn't anybody there, at least not anybody alive." "Jesus," Matt said. "Yeah, it was bad. A few of the boats were burned, and we saw a handful of those people. We called out and they ran for us, falling into the water," Linda explained, her voice tight with emotion. "Remind me not to go swimming around there," Matt remarked grimly. "Yeah, I'd like to think some people got out safely, but if they did, I have no idea where they went," Linda said. Linda was distraught over the retelling of the incident. Matt patted her on the shoulder for comfort, a simple gesture that seemed to help. "I'll let the others know. You just focus on getting us home," Matt said. Linda smiled, giving him a thankful nod. While they knew each other from the hardware store, they weren't particularly close. But Matt was always friendly, and that continued. Matt walked over to the others to share the bad news as Linda wiped a tear away from her face before hitting the throttle a little harder. Despite everything, they had a successful day, and she tried to focus on the positives. Chapter 8. The sun was setting, creating warm red and orange hues in the sky, reflecting on the water in the bay. The colors danced across the surface, shimmering with each gentle wave. It was a postcard-perfect view, the kind that made people forget their troubles, if only for a moment. Officer Bowman, Henry, and Linda stood on the patio at Matt's house, each holding drinks and looking out. The wooden deck provided an unobstructed view of the water, with the mainland barely visible in the distance. As they admired the view, Matt walked over with a drink of his own. The ice clinked against the glass as he moved, a sound that seemed to belong to a more normal time. "It's a hell of a view, isn't it?" Matt asked, nodding toward the horizon where the sun was slowly dipping below the waterline. "You can say that again," Linda replied, taking a sip from her glass. "My wife Stephanie wasn't exactly sold on the place initially, until I made her come out here at sunset. One look and she was sold," Matt explained, a hint of pride in his voice. "You've done all right for yourself, Matt," Bowman said, surveying the spacious deck, the comfortable furniture, the quality craftsmanship evident throughout the property. "You have no idea how right you are. The other place we were looking at was on Roanoke Island. It's crazy to think that we're safe down here instead of being in the thick of things, all because the sellers didn't want to split closing costs with us," Matt said. Stephanie stepped out onto the patio, interjecting herself into the conversation. She was an attractive woman, roughly the same age as Matt, with a warm, welcoming presence about her. She carried a pitcher of tea, which she set down on the table before turning her attention to her husband. "Tell the full story, Matt," Stephanie urged, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I am, honey," Matt insisted, though his expression suggested he knew exactly what she meant. "Matt, tell the full story," Stephanie repeated, her eyebrow raised in a playful challenge. Stephanie spoke with a playful tone, crossing her arms and tapping her foot. Finally, Matt relented, dropping his head, knowing he was defeated. The others watched with amusement, recognizing the familiar dance of a long-married couple. Well, even without splitting the closing costs, the house on Roanoke was still about 10 grand cheaper, and a little more modern. But Stephanie refused it on principle, told me that we had to keep looking. 2 days later, we found this place," Matt confessed, gesturing around them. "Thank you," Stephanie said with a satisfied nod. "Yeah, but I still had to sell you on the place, so it was a team effort," Matt added quickly, not willing to completely surrender. Stephanie chuckled, nodding in agreement. The easy rapport between them was evident, a comfortable familiarity that had clearly been built over years. "Dinner's ready if y'all want to come in and fix a plate," Stephanie announced to the group. Everybody stepped through the patio door, spotting several plates of food spread out on the counter: baked chicken, mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and dinner rolls. The aroma filled the kitchen, making everyone's mouths water. It had been a long day, and no one had eaten a proper meal since early that morning. "This looks incredible, thank you so much," Linda said appreciatively. "After the day you had, I figured you deserved a good meal," Stephanie replied. Norma and Anthony came up the stairs to join them. Norma's hair was damp, suggesting she'd recently showered, likely to wash away the salt water from their earlier escape. Anthony bore the look of someone who'd been working hard all day, his muscular arms showing smudges of grease and dirt that hadn't quite come off. "That smells all kinds of good, Stephanie," Norma exclaimed, inhaling deeply. "It's appreciated," Anthony added, eyeing the spread hungrily. "Well, come on and dig in before it gets cold," Stephanie encouraged, handing out plates to everyone. The group fixed their plates before settling into their seats around the large table on the patio deck. The wooden chairs creaked slightly as they sat down, the table already set with silverware and napkins. The group dove into their food, only the sounds of chewing and utensils clinking off plates filling the air. After days of fighting the undead and eating whatever was convenient, A home-cooked meal was a luxury they weren't taking for granted. Several minutes passed before Henry broke the silence, setting his fork down and turning to Bowman. "So what's next on the agenda?" Henry asked, his tone making it clear he wasn't just making casual conversation. "I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm drinking a couple of beers and passing out for 12 hours or so," Bowman replied, cutting into his chicken. "I meant what's next with—" Henry began, his expression serious. Bowman chuckled, holding his hand up to get Henry to stop talking. "I know what you meant, Henry. What's next with Bodie Island?" Bowman said. Henry nodded in the affirmative, waiting for Bowman to elaborate. The rest of the table had quieted down, all eyes turning to the officer as they awaited his response. "Well, Anthony, while the rest of us were out there risking our lives to block off the bridges today, why don't you tell them what you were up to?" Bowman suggested, shifting the focus to Matt's co-worker. Anthony smirked as he shoved a giant spoonful of mac and cheese into his mouth. He was so excited to share, he began talking with his mouth full. Bowman held up his hand, getting him to pause. The look of disapproval was half serious, half amused. "Chew your food, man, we can wait 10 seconds, Bowman said. Anthony tried to say sorry through a full mouth, but it was hard to make out. Finally, he swallowed and began talking excitedly, almost tripping over his words in his enthusiasm. "Well, you know that moving truck place down in Buxton? Well, some of the boys and I got a hold of a cutting torch and went to town on a few of them," Anthony explained, gesturing animatedly with his hands. The group looked at each other, nobody outside of Bowman really understanding what he was saying. Confused glances were exchanged around the table, everyone waiting for the explanation to become clearer. "So, we cut escape hatches into the top of the trucks and welded in some ladders. We also installed some railing up top for that extra level of protection," Anthony continued, clearly proud of their work. "Protection from what?" Linda asked. "Protection from falling overboard. There's a whole bevy of gear at the bait shop down there, so we're going to drive one of these trucks into a horde of those things, climb up top and do a little spear fishing," Anthony explained with a grin, miming a spearing motion with his fork. "I like it. So does that mean we're driving out of here tomorrow?" Henry asked. "In the afternoon, a group of us are going up first thing in the morning to secure the gun shop. We get the firepower to take back the island, and then that's exactly what we're going to do," Bowman explained, laying out the broad strokes of their plan. "Well, Bowman, I hope there's more to the plan than that, because that's some straight-up cowboy shit you're playing," Norma remarked skeptically. "Come on, Norma, you know me. When have you ever seen me without a full plan?" Bowman asked, feigning offense. 3 years ago during Dollar Beer Night at the darts tournament? You remember that pretty young thing you begged me to put on your team so you could hit on her?" Norma reminded him with a sly smile. Bowman grimaced at the mention of that night, clearly remembering an incident he'd rather forget. His expression shifted from confident to embarrassed in an instant, prompting curious looks from the others at the table. "Yeah, well, I have a plan now, I can assure you. So, let's move on," Bowman said hurriedly, attempting to change the subject. Everybody else at the table spoke up, saying no forcefully. The chorus of objections was accompanied by amused looks, everyone suddenly very interested in this previously untold story. "Oh, there's no way we're moving on without hearing the story," Linda declared, setting down her drink and leaning forward expectantly. Bowman's shoulders slumped, knowing that there wasn't a way out of this one. He resigned himself to the inevitable embarrassment, taking a long drink from his glass as if steeling himself. "Well, our friendly neighborhood officer here wanted to impress her with some blindfolded throwing," Norma began, clearly enjoying Bowman's discomfort. "In my defense, I can do that pretty well," Bowman interjected quickly. "Yeah, when you haven't had 6 tall boys in an hour," Norma countered with a laugh. "Oh no, what happened?" Linda asked, already anticipating the punchline. Norma shot a glance over to Bowman to see if he would fess up. After a moment, she began to speak, but he cut her off, deciding to take control of the narrative himself. "Yeah, well, I thought she looked cute with an eye patch," Bowman admitted with a wince. And everybody at the table erupted in laughter, which eventually got Bowman to laugh at himself as well. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by the warm camaraderie of shared humor. Even in the midst of an apocalypse, the ability to laugh together created a momentary bubble of normalcy. The group continued eating and swapping stories for the better part of an hour. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from pre-outbreak anecdotes to reflections on their current situation. Well after everybody finished their plates, Stephanie pushed away from the table. A couple others began to get up, but she stopped them with a gesture. "Everybody stay comfortable, I'm just going in to grab dessert," Stephanie assured them, already moving toward the kitchen. Bowman ignored the offer, getting up from the table. His movements were slow, betraying the exhaustion that had been building over the day's events. The rush of adrenaline had long since worn off, leaving behind aching muscles and a bone-deep weariness. "That's mighty generous of you, ma'am, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to politely decline," Bowman said apologetically. "Are you sure, Bowman? She's a hell of a cook," Matt pressed, though his expression suggested he understood Bowman's need to rest. Bowman chuckled, patting his stomach. "Trust me, I know. I had 2 plates. If I have another bite of anything, I'm going to explode." "I'll at least stay and visit a while longer. I'll get Matt to get the fire pit going," Stephanie suggested. Bowman nodded appreciatively, but continued getting up. His body language made it clear that while he was grateful for the invitation, his mind was made up. The day had taken its toll, and tomorrow promised even greater challenges. "I promise, I will take you up on that offer, but on another night. I really need to get some rest before tomorrow," Bowman explained. Bowman glanced down to Matt, hoping he would pick up on what he was hinting at. They needed to be sharp for the mission ahead, and that meant getting adequate rest tonight. "As much as it pains me to say it, the officer is right," Matt conceded with a dramatic sigh. Some laughs filled the air, acknowledging Matt's playful reluctance to end the evening. "Honey, why don't we save dessert for tomorrow once we're all back here safe and sound?" Matt suggested. Stephanie nodded at Matt, hearing the tone in his voice. She understood the implicit message. Tomorrow would be dangerous, and they needed to be prepared. The light mood of moments ago was replaced by the sobering reality of what lay ahead. "I want everybody to get a good night's sleep tonight, because we got a long day ahead of us tomorrow," Bowman said, addressing the entire group. "Don't worry, Bowman, we'll be ready," Matt assured him, his expression resolute. "Good, because when that sun comes up, we're going to go take back our island and rescue every last person who's still up there." The end.